Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Awesome. All right, well, thank you guys all for coming. I can't believe we didn't have to quiet the crowd down on our own, but a nice size group here, and we're going to try to keep it pretty fun, entertaining, casual. We'll have time for Q&A at the end as well, so write your questions down, keep them handy, but thank you guys for coming. So this is our first event of the year for KCIMA 2025. We have a few more down the road, including our social networking event, Matchmaker, our philanthropic event too. So all have been really well attended, and we hope to see you guys here at all future events kind of as you can, as your schedules allow. I know we're all busy, but it's a good time to come together and meet everyone, and it's nice to see so many faces. My name's Kyle McGovern. I'm the sales director at Ogre. For those of you who don't know who I am, I hope to meet you one day, but my job is not to talk about myself today. It's to be quiet and kind of let the experts here on the panel have the discussion for us. So I'm here to moderate, mediate, jump in with as many questions as I think are interesting to hopefully everyone else as I find them interesting to myself. But it's really nice to see you all, and let's kind of jump into it. Sound good? Cool. So kind of introducing our panel right here. There's pictures floating around, but the panel is navigating media controversy. So political polarization, I think we all know that that's a reality in today's world. Brand safety, that is a ongoing conversation that's been a part of the discussion ever since I've been in this industry, since 2009. So we want to tackle this, and just sort of understand what the future looks like. And we have 4 or 5 different perspectives here that kind of give us different angles of how they approach everything. The first is Carrie Gill. Comes to us from MMGY, the SVP of Paid Media and Partnerships, I believe. All right, there we go. So Carrie has a plethora of experience. She's a former president of KCIMA, but she does a lot of work in this space across a variety of different clients. So brand safety, very important to her, whether it's a hotel or a DMO, destination marketing organization. There's a whole bunch of nuanced thoughts and ideas and procedures that Carrie has to put into her planning with her teams, so excited to get her perspective. And then we also have Valerie Schlosser. I said it wrong. VML's very own group director here, and then she's spent most of her career working in integrated marketing as well as search. So talking about the future of advertising and sort of how search is evolving, that's going to be a really nice perspective to hear. And Valerie's experience is across a number of different clients, as you guys know. There's so many different brands and verticals and channels that are addressed here at VML, so it'll be great to get her perspective. And then we have Andy Martinson, Senior Manager at H&R Block, all things omnichannel. Andy brings 17 years of brand experience to us, working across all of the different channels, kind of as I just said, but Andy has a lot of other interests as well, as a member of the IAB Executive Committee for Gaming, so maybe not instinctually what everyone would think when it comes to an H&R Block employee, but as someone who used to sell gaming, that makes me really, really happy. I love to see it. And then we also have Chelsea Rohde. So if you don't know her, you will. She's awesome. No. I feel like she knows everybody here, so if she hasn't gotten to you yet, it just wasn't your turn. So you're definitely on our list now. Chelsea's at SiriusXM Media. She's been there for 10 plus years. She has a plethora of agency experience here in Kansas City before that. And that experience at SiriusXM provides some unique insights to the topic today. Programmatic media, obviously, but then we also have streaming audio. The streaming audio world just presents, a different channel, obviously, but a whole bunch of different challenges and also opportunities when it comes to the conversation around brand safety and how we can utilize it to really make our brands present in the areas that matter most to them and the areas that they're most comfortable with. And then last but not least, we have Mr. Austin Pratt from formerly Barkley, now MissionOne Media. So don't worry, he didn't go anywhere. He's still in the same building. If you ever need to find him, it's that orange one down on Main Street, I want to say. But yeah, Austin is a performance marketing guru, and Austin has a real knack for making media-based decisions that are backed by data. So in this world of brand safety where we need to leverage data, we also want to, recognize consumer privacy. I think that that's a huge topic around in the industry today. So Austin will provide a whole bunch of insight there in terms of how we can juggle that balancing act of making sure that we are caring about, both brand safety, also consumer privacy, and how you do that at scale and efficiently. So, does that sound good? Cool. All right, so we'll kind of jump into it, but I got my notes here as well, just in case. But just talking about brand safety in general, kind of like to kick it off with a little round robin, but not necessarily specific to your specific core competencies. I think we'll get into that throughout, but kind of going around the room, is there one or two things that stick out to you as just a main challenge when it comes to brand safety? And I'm thinking maybe it's coming to a consensus as an organization. Maybe it's determining, what's important to your brand. Maybe it's just the challenge is simply the technology's not there yet. But just kind of wanted to pass that around.
Are we just going down the line?
However you guys
want. Okay. I probably have a lot of answers to that, but I actually think more recently, I think it's the technology. I think you are seeing more and more often websites, providers, technology trying to evade brand safety measures, whether it's MFAs or the way that they spoof a website to not actually show what's on the page. I think technology is actually probably one of the biggest hurdles that we all probably need to be thinking about, because their number one job is to evade some of the tech that we're putting in place to prevent running on kind of unscrupulous content. So that for me is probably the piece that I have been thinking about the most recently.
I think that one of the big things I think about is like trying to navigate both. You have internal factors and you have external factors, right? So you have all of the external things that are surrounding you in the world, be it political or weather disasters, anything that could be hitting you, your client. But you have all of these internal factors as well. You have to get internal alignment. You have to get buy-in. You have to be communicating constantly with your own people and with your client to make sure that everybody understands is in alignment on what you're doing. And I think that things are moving so fast, and there are such strong feelings about what's right in terms of what we should be doing, that it is really easy for people to get misaligned very quickly.
Yeah, from the brand side, I think it's alignment. And it's alignment not just as a brand and what your tolerance is for safety and where you want to be, but it's aligning through channels as well, because there's a programmatic side, there's like the television side, there's the creative side, and then aligning that across all of your agencies as well, and making sure everyone is on the same page, which is a huge issue, because if one person is off, then it throws the entire plan to hell, which is no good. Also, good job sitting in the front. Well done. We will throw things at you, because heads up. But it's really alignment across multiple things within the brand and as within your agencies that like matters. Make sure you got everything set up for safety, for what you think is going to be safe for you. You've got your own.
I have my own. And I hate microphones. From the publisher perspective, it's all of the above. It's the technology, it's working with your clients and your brands. Did it go off? Is it still? Okay. In the streaming audio world, there's not just Shocker, iHeart, and Pandora, and Spotify, and SoundCloud. There's a plethora of other streaming audio publishers out there, and as the time spent with streaming audio grows and the opportunity grows, and then you add in podcasts, which is a bizarre but amazing part of the industry, there's a lot of what do we do? And we as a company are establishing holistic measurement when it comes to tracking brand safety and brand suitability with the IAB, because there hasn't been an industry standard for podcasts specifically. And then part of it too is, having the conversations, and sometimes they can be tough with your client friends, who sit next to me. And then it's, do I define it for them, or do I wait for them to come to me? So we just want to have open conversations, and that's the role that we play.
Yeah, so going last is fun because everybody pretty much said everything that I was going to say. There are two things I want to touch on. Carrie mentioned the technology, and I think that's going to be a big part as we continue to move forward. We've always been in a world where when you have something good, someone obviously tries to create something bad to go against it. Where I'm fascinated with is the standards we put in place, as just mentioned, of what the expectation is as we get into this new world. If I say AI, do I win something so we can break the seal of AI like 5 minutes in?
I had it like my fourth question.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say AI now then. What happens when we start getting into deepfake conversations and unintrusive audio ads that were not actually created by the person? Like, those are the brand safety things that are really interesting and fascinating to me as we move forward, and how do we keep our brand safe in that world, which I don't think anybody has an answer to yet. But that's the fun part. We get to develop that answer.
No, those are some really good answers, and you have me jumping around with where I want to go to it next. But
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, guys. So, I think that, what do we do now communicating, from Chelsea, from your perspective with the brand, or just sort of, it's more about that consensus. So, Andy and Chelsea, you guys both touched on it a little bit, but how do you get everyone on the same page with those internal stakeholders? Maybe from, the omni-channel perspective with Andy, like, hey, you're working with so many different departments. You're working with television, out-of-home, digital, people that are very well-versed in traditional brand safety measures, and those who are not. And Chelsea, you kind of mentioned just finding that collaborative medium, collaborative middle ground with, with your clients, whether they be agencies or brands. So, are there any tips or tricks, in terms of coming to that consensus, or maybe it's more of a common struggle that you finally find yourself coming up against?
That was fast, Chelsea.
I want to hear what you say.
Okay. Over communicating. I mean, it's as easy as that answer, but it's as difficult as that answer, because that means everyone has to know what you're communicating and be aligned to it. But that's really the partnership piece. Like, when I talk to Chelsea, it's about, hey, where are you comfortable being? Well, I don't know specifically, but I have some generalization. And then that becomes difficult, because what does generalization mean? Like, oh, I don't want to be around this specific content. Maybe it's violence, or it's political, or whatever it ends up being. But how do you know? And then that's the question for partners, like, well, how can you help me make sure that that doesn't happen, and that I can be confident knowing that it isn't? And then what do we do when it does happen, and how do we react? Which is a huge, secondary question of, well, what do you do when you end up there? Which I think we'll get to later. So yeah. I won't jump into that one yet.
That's exactly it. It might surprise you that I think 99.9% of the RFPs that I get do not have anything about brand safety in them. And then when we get into a situation where, and I'm going to mention her a few times, we're running a podcast network and our show level reporting comes out, and Megyn Kelly's on there. And they go, oh, we didn't want to be in Megyn Kelly. How would I know that, guys? So if we need to anti-target certain categories, if we need to only be in specific shows or specific networks, that's something that is a part of the over-communication. I won't know that until you tell me. And then, what additional levers do we need to layer on? We adhere to the GARM standards for brand safety, Global Alliance for Responsible Media. So there is a base layer of safety already involved in our streaming and our podcasts. So just knowing that gives a lot of comfort, because to me, the opportunity for audio and, beyond Pandora, beyond SoundCloud is so huge. Just understanding that we would not monetize anything that's not categorized is a conversation that needs to be had. There was another point that I was going to make, but I forgot it.
A quick follow-up on that one, Chelsea, is what you said. It's like if you don't communicate it right, but then different industries have different standards. You have GARM, which is great. Television doesn't have that. And out of home doesn't have that. You could end up being on a billboard or a digital space that could be a little bit sketch. So you really have to kind of jump into it as a brand and make sure you are double checking all those things as well, and that you have your agencies on board with making sure that there's double checks for those types of things, because that is a struggle.
And it's on a case-by-case basis, right? So I work heavily with MMGY. What is safe for Colorado might not be safe for Kansas City. So me having to understand everything is really vital to the success of my campaigns and the integrity that I bring to my partnerships. But to me, the audio opportunity and beyond what we know as household names, I like to think of it as the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and there are millions of loyal listeners around that still consider that content brand safe. But again, working with what understanding those opportunities are with my people.
Yeah. So the commonalities I'm hearing is that just since the beginning is that it's not one size fits all and over communicate. And I'm just sort of curious, and the different brand safety solutions that are available to us. So I think that on the surface level, we all go with the traditional brand safety vendors that are coming to mind. I won't name drop in a positive or negative way. But thinking about those other things, there's even, creative certifications, and there's so many different ways to place brand safety protocols in your workflow so that you can prevent these things from, these negative effects from taking place. So I'm kind of curious, since it's not a one-size-fits-all, maybe we can elaborate a little bit. Chelsea, you just touched on it. But maybe, Austin, when you're going from a performance marketing lens, what are you looking for from those maybe traditional providers? But then beyond that, maybe if anyone has experience, I'm not sure if Carrie, I know you work in the travel vertical, high impact creative and high creative standards matter quite a bit. So we've also talked about the protocols in place and things like that you can do that are beyond just those traditional, leveraging those third-party partnerships. But if we wanted to kind of start with evaluating third parties and how you use that from a programmatic lens.
Yeah, so anytime we want to look at and kind of vet third parties in this space, I think the number one thing that we want to go into before that is an understanding that this is a new world and they're not going to be able to catch everything. So figuring out somebody that actually has a business plan and an outlook for what's impacting them in their business and our clients and how that'll translate into the future is one of the biggest things in my eyes. I fully understand and don't expect our partners to be 100% on full brand safety. I expect part of that to be a human element that we have to then also be doing our own due diligence and just not assume that a platform is doing everything for us, because that gets us in trouble. As soon as we start to give up full control, then we don't have the true ability to give an insight to a client on what that means. So anytime I'm vetting a third party, that's kind of first and foremost is, one, obviously be good at what you do. I don't think we would be talking to you if we didn't think you were at least good at what you did. But then what is your outlook as a business for how you are going to continue to evolve with the industry?
So I think working in travel is, it seems like a really straightforward approach to brand safety. Is this on? Okay. And I think it's really nuanced, because while you guys were talking, I think it's all up to the appetite of your advertiser too. I think Wendy's probably has a much different appetite for brand safety than H&R Block even. So I think it is not a set it and forget it. It's really bespoke to your client and what your client wants to be aligned with, what's important for them. We obviously in travel are really sensitive to any content around, right now, like the perceived safety of flying. A client at MMGY, Destination DC, when the plane crashed, that wasn't necessarily, something that we had in our list of content that we didn't want to be aligned with. But immediately, even though it was after hours, we ensured that we were implementing those blocking any content aligned with the plane crash, because obviously normally DC news would be high up on our contextual alignment list. So it certainly is not a set it and forget it, and it's changing every single day. And I think it was Andy who said it too, or maybe it was Austin. If you're not participating in your brand safety, you're probably only doing half of the exercise, because I think if you're not doing a spot check and doing a site level report to see where your ads are serving, then you probably truly aren't understanding the full scope of your brand experience that a user is generating. And the digital out of home actually made me laugh too, because the number of times I've served at like a gas station on like a poker machine drives me crazy. But again, it's our responsibility, because those partners in the space, they can only do so much. And I think if you're not participating in it, you're not doing your client any service either. I don't know if anybody else has thoughts.
And then Valerie, I mean, one of the things we were talking about from the search perspective is just the, there will be challenges that we can address, later on, but how you get to sort of choose when you are leaning in or leaning out and dealing with those issues from a paid search perspective and sort of letting organic fall where it may. But is there anything you wanted to add on that, or is it's pretty straightforward, no?
Sure. Okay. I can chat about that. So as a channel, so there is paid and organic they can actually both like flex in to this space to support other channels. The thing about organic, and Joe and I were talking about this earlier, right? Like you will have clients that come to you and say, like, from a brand protection stance, can I get rid of this listing? Can I bump this down? Can I outrank it? And the answer is no, not easily, not typically, right? And we know that, but so this is a space where paid can help a lot. Paid is really flexible. It's really malleable in terms of messaging. We're able to kind of help support channels that sometimes have to back away if there's a sensitive issue going on. We can help support organic while we're trying to build up rankings. So this is an area where paid can be really helpful. Yeah.
Kyle, I've got one more thing that we haven't touched on in this space, is when you've actually decided that we're comfortable with something that might be a little bit on the edge of brand safe, for example, like a news program. Do you have the right creative that's running there? Because that's something that's really important from a brand safety sense of, okay, if I have news in my plan, do I have a more serious ad that runs against news, or am I running my happy-go-lucky like plan that might be running on another channel that's a little bit more entertainment? Because we can all see and remember what happened with like the Subway thing. Oh, giant bombs going off. Hey, check out your awesome sandwiches. We love this. It's great. And it ran directly next to that, and there was like a huge issue. Luckily, news cycles go fast and people forgot about it. But did they? Because I'm still remembering it. So I think having the right creative that matches up to what you think is within brand standards really matters.
No, that makes sense. And we do it in every other aspect of how we plan and buy our media as well. So when, even as something with travel and a DMO, there are certain mandates on how the dollars are spent and where they're spent. And we take those into account. And then after that, we look at all of those pieces like creative type and geo-targeting and the messaging. But for some reason, we can get stuck in this bad habit or rabbit hole of, okay, we identified what brand safety partners we're going to use. Let's just implement those. We'll look at the numbers, and then we'll be good enough. But that's not the case, because once you do decide on those brand safety measures and where you want to be, like you said, then that's where the work actually has a chance to begin. And you can update your creative and change the messaging and really address the consumer, not just in a brand safe way, but actually in the way that we were all trying to do this before we had to worry so much about that brand safety. Kind of looking into this, we've touched on it a little bit, just about the DC plane crash and how you guys had to adapt to that. But we're also talking about political polarization and how the definition of harmful content has really changed. Harmful content when I first started in this industry was like kill, murder, very, very simple keywords, and that was sort of the end of it. But now harmful content in a politically polarized world is it's so divided. So if you take the wrong side, then someone may hate you just for taking the wrong side. So just in terms of, your experience understanding or defining harmful content for, the channels that you're working in or the clients that you're working with, my first thought goes to, it's July 2020. My wife and I, we find out we're having a kid. We're super excited. The whole world is falling down. We're all so scared. It's like the first, second wave of COVID. We're even hesitant to go into the hospital. And then the first thing the doctor says is like, man, if you guys want to travel, the airports are empty. So like as a travel marketer and things like that, how are your brands navigating the initial times of COVID, just as like a very tangible example?
How did we navigate COVID? Oh my God, how much time do you have? I don't have like a year to talk about that. I can't even really go back that. But I think travel is a uniquely, oftentimes publicly funded industry that we work in. And so I think we are uniquely positioned to probably be a little bit more sensitive to the political landscape. An example of that that's really like tactical and how we think about brand safety too is because it's tax funded, oftentimes if you're a destination, you can't spend marketing dollars in your destination. The goal of those tax dollars is to bring people from outside of a destination into your destination. So serving in destination is a huge problem. It is something we deal with all the time, and we struggle with it. But I think it's something that people probably don't think about as often. But probably the more germane and relevant thing that's happening for us right now is the international tourism into the United States. A lot of our destinations rely really heavily on Canadian, Mexican, European travel into the U.S. And as you can all imagine, because everybody has been certainly paying attention to the news, the tariff conversation has really impacted our tourism industry. And while we watched the content for a while, hoping that it would probably die down a little bit, and we were looking at the data, we didn't really actively block any of that content because it didn't seem necessary at the time. But in the last 4 to 6 weeks, we've made a pivot and we've decided that we want to block any of that negative content surrounding coming in, particularly Canadian travel, because that one's the one that's probably been the most deeply impacted. But it does make you feel more in tune to the political landscape when you are often funded by tax dollars. It's a very unique position to be in. I'm sure that probably something like H&R Block 2 has to be acutely aware of any legislation that's going to impact their business as well. But it isn't as simple as plane crashes. There is a myriad and layers of things that we're turning on and off on a pretty weekly basis. Anybody else?
Oh, I can talk. I've already mentioned Megyn Kelly once. I'll mention her again. It's tough because we can, in the audio space, kind of cherry pick where we want to run. Do Megyn Kelly's listeners deserve to come to Colorado? Do they not buy toilet paper? Do they not, file taxes? But it's up to, again, it goes all to what the brand's comfortable with, and then working with your reps on figuring that out. Because if you flatline news, that's half of all podcast inventory. So that's a really big chunk of, scale to completely eliminate. So, but there are things that we could do. We could comb through our 2,500 show list, and pick out the ones that you absolutely don't want to be in. That's totally fine. Or is it just a conversation of, it's okay. It's okay to be in that type of content. Because that's the reality for people. Now, again, it comes down to we still already have a floor of brand safety. So there's no content around violence, human trafficking, those kinds of things. So it's, again, just having those very candid, proactive conversations with your reps.
A quick one that's like a recent example is TikTok. TikTok, is it getting banned? We're on that platform. Platform's fine. We have no problem being there, but is it going away? It did for a second, and then it was right back on, and now it's maybe going away again, and still back on. So sometimes it's about the person and the place you're actually advertising with, not just their content, but their actual platform itself having a implication in the marketplace. Other things to keep an example of too is like in gaming space. What constitutes violence? Is Fortnite violent? Yeah, there's some shooting, right? People get blasted, but it's cartoonish. But if you listen to my kid play it, it's kill that guy. So what constitutes that being either okay or not okay, and where? So I think there's a lot of considerations at a larger than just like the content itself, of like the platform itself. Is that okay to be on? Like, are we just okay with the platform as it exists? Which is a consideration that we always take into account. We did, by the way, go dark on TikTok for like 5 minutes, and then we're right back on, because it just was one of those things that we had to like manage in the moment. That was fun.
And then when you are considering explicit content, I go back to the days of the OG Pandora launching, and oh my gosh, people are listening to rap music and there's the F word. Do we want to be around that? And then there's SoundCloud, right? Oh no. So we're having that kind of moment in the podcast world as well. And the vast majority of people will not negatively associate a brand when they're in explicit kind of content. Explicit meaning, violence or swear words or adult content, that kind of thing. Not sex, you guys, but maybe adult that content, like Call Her Daddy. She got her start talking about sex, right? That's her jam. But she's a phenomenal host, and she's got a massive following. So it's going back to those conversations and understanding the strategy and the creative message, and being really, you can be really surgical with it as well. But just understanding that from the consumer perspective, they're good. They're not going to be like, oh my God, H&R Block was in this game or in this podcast about gaming, and they're talking about, first-person shooter games, whatever it is. And then women specifically are more sensitive to content that's racial language or sexist language than they are explicit content. So it's just, again, understanding where you are and working with your people. What?
I was enjoying that. I'm sorry. I didn't want to break it, but I do kind of want to pull us back a little bit to like just to level set. It all comes down to those like first conversations, because like you enter into a client relationship and you get down the road and you didn't have them, right? And not only does it come down to what does your client need and want, and what are their feelings on it, but I was kind of sitting here thinking about industry regulations. Like we have pharma clients, we have health industry clients, we have travel clients, we have financial industry clients. These are all very tightly regulated spaces, right? And sometimes we've had to sit down with some of these folks who want to do certain things, and we have to make sure that they're aligned to those industries and what they require as well. So like if you're not having those conversations early, you're just so much pain.
It hurts me more than...
No, I love that, and we keep coming back to this, this theme of over communication. It has me thinking about, a lot of what we're talking about is upfront. It's on the agency side, it's on the client side, it's coming together and collaborating as partners, because there is that joint business partnership, signed agreement, we work together sort of relationship. But then taking it to the next level with the specific vendors like this guy here and Chelsea as well. My question is more about, the next step of how can everyone work better together, and what can we demand more out of, or what can y'all demand more out of from the different vendors out there? I think that Chelsea made an interesting point that like, hey, there will be no brand safety, mentions on an RFP that she gets because it's streaming audio, because we're not thinking about those typical vendors. But there's still questions that are left unanswered. So, how can vendors be more forthright, with what brand safety precautions they've taken, but also how can we sort of have that, ignite that communication and that discussion when there isn't that contractual relationship. Does that make sense? You know, because I think it's only standard that you guys want to get that you want to evaluate all of your partners with all of the information you can on hand. So it's about how do we pry that information out of vendors instead of just kind of getting that top line, hey, we can perform for you sort of proposal. That's kind of for anybody though.
I'll take a stab at it, I guess. Okay. I mean, it depends on the vendor that you're working with. If it's a publisher and they own 100% of their content and inventory, I think that's a really straightforward conversation. It's what content are you comfortable with? Where do you want to be seen on that site? What kind of alignment does your brand have comfortability with? But I think that's probably like the easiest situation to navigate. I think oftentimes that's not the reality of most of our media buys that we're executing. And I think, again, I put a lot of the onus on the agency professional to own that conversation and ask about the SSPs that they're running on, the hygiene of the inventory that they're running on, because I think, again, those partners, not intentionally, probably don't share that level of detail because most people don't ask for it, to Chelsea's point. So I do think that they won't share it unless you ask for it, and creating that expectation at the forefront of what kind of inventory you're comfortable with, and maybe not at the expense of performance, because I think that's a big balancing act, right, is how much you're willing to pay, because the better inventory certainly comes at a premium cost. But I do think I put a lot of the expectation on probably the agency partner to drive that conversation, because not that vendors are trying to get away with anything, but I mean, you guys are trying to hit performance goals, and oftentimes, block lists or inclusion lists can become really expensive. We were joking when we were talking about this panel, we're going to get back to ad networks, and I would guess that 75% of this crowd doesn't know what an ad network is. But that truly is probably the direction that we're going to, is being really explicit in the places that you want to buy inventory in, and less of that kind of opacity that we're used to in the industry.
Please don't. Agreed. Yeah, exactly. It is more of a reactive conversation with us, although for those who know me know I'm more proactive than my company tells me to be. But I can't define that for you. I will mention it. I will poke around with a client that I think probably needs more brand safety measures in place, but then it's also understanding. So, again, and I'm speaking from the audio perspective, as more and more people are listening to streaming audio and spending more time in those spaces, and the podcast industry is growing, it's understanding. And then when you're working with your tracking and your measurement vendors, if you're doing IAS or Double Verify or Barometer or whatever you're using, it's understanding where it's relevant to use that kind of tracking. So for me, from like a Pandora perspective, it's logged in users, it's premium content, and it's inherently brand safe, right? It's music. So do we need IAS on there, or can we save a few bucks for you, right? So it's kind of understanding that. It's, podcasts, you can't really do that. Barometer is really the only thing out there at the moment that does that, and that is something that y'all will have to contract with them. So it's a give and take. It's again the theme: over communication and work with your reps.
I don't want to bogart this. Austin, do you have anything before I talk? Go for it. Okay. The other piece, I think, from the brand side is correct expectations internally, because this is going to happen. Like, something's going to come up. You're going to end up on something that the CMO gets a nasty email. It happens all the time, no matter where you are, or what you're doing, or how brand safe you think you are. So setting the expectation early is something that we do, of like, okay, when this happens, here is our response. And working with our agency partners to understand what are our options. Can we cut ties? Can we have a response as fast as how fast? 24 hours, 12 hours, 48 hours? How long is it going to take to rectify this situation? And then communicating that with our CMO, with our C-suite, so they understand here are all the options we have and what we will implement when something does happen. Because no matter what we do, it's gonna. I mean, has anybody ever not experienced a campaign that was like, perfect, yay, everything went swimmingly? There was no emails to anybody that was like, oh, you guys are too woke. Oh, you guys are too conservative. What is wrong with you? Doesn't matter. You're going to get that email. So how do you respond to it?
I think that's so good. Like, let's beat a dead horse. Communicate, communicate, communicate. So important there. I also think Carrie mentioned it that put the onus on your agency. One of the things I think all of our agency partners need to get better at is having some uncomfortable conversations with some of our vendors and be willing to say, what the hell? Like, I'm gonna pick on you for a second. It never happened. But like if I had a buy, and I've known Chelsea for a long time, we know each other's clients. Chelsea's great at knowing each of your clients and what it matters to them. And she is actually on the good side of asking questions kind of at that forefront stage. But I think it's important to then be willing to come back to her. I'm going to call me daddy example. If I had a client that she knew would not be happy with being there and it ended up on there, well, what the hell? Like this is a partnership. This is a kind of a unified effort, but put that onus on your agency partners. Like think through the things. Not to go back to kind of my original point, but we cannot become roboticized in this portion of our industry. It's very easy to check a box and say we did the thing and we have a partner that's going to solve all of our problems in brand safety. And we just know that's not the case. Be strategic, think through everything, and work closely with your partners.
I love that as a brand, by the way. It's your fault.
It's not my fault.
Yeah, it's not one size fits all. To beat a dead horse again, and from the vendor side of things, you don't know what you don't know, and you can't put everything into a proposal because then no one would have time to review every proposal. And something that we've been trying to bring back, at least internally at my org, is the walking meeting, the 5-minute walking meeting, or the 10-minute call. And to Austin's point about just having those honest conversations with the vendors, at least for myself, case study of one, I would much rather have the direct conversation with the news, whatever it is, good news, bad news, or anything, but just something addressable to go off of and really just sort of figure out, hey, maybe this isn't the right fit right here, or maybe not, or oh my gosh, we didn't mention MFAs, or things like that. Hey, we scrubbed them clean. All these different things where you don't know where folks' priorities are. So that level of communication, that's happening between agencies and brands. Like I agree. I think it's getting better, and I think it hasn't always been bad. I think it's just sometimes, I can't remember who used the word robotic. Is that Andy Austin? But sometimes, we all have so much going on, whether it be agency, vendor, or brand, that we can get robotic with how we tackle some of these issues in these conversations. So yeah, quick verbal communication has always been a good way that I've thought works for sort of finding that common ground or finding the lack thereof.
Kyle, I have one little add-on to that.
Yes,
For the straight up media folks, don't be scared of letting your vendors talk to your data and analytics and your ad ops people who are probably closer to some of that stuff than you are. We're not gonna lead them astray, right? We're not gonna lead them to the bad side. It's as many people as people like Kyle and I can have these conversations with at the front, the better, truthfully.
Actually, I wanted to tack onto that a little bit too. So talking about agencies setting expectations with vendors and things like that, I kind of wanted to layer on top of that too. Like, I know that a lot of that comes from, even right now, I can name like a few situations where we have clients that are just get it live, right? Like just get it live. And the pressure of that, I know, causes a lot of this lack of information that trickles from agency to vendor and all of that. And so I think it's really important to emphasize those conversations, again, kind of pulling back to what I was saying before about conversations that we were having really early in relationships, that set the foundation for all of this. And like, for when we're having those conversations at the agency level with our clients, I really need this information, right? Like, yes, we're going to get it live. We're going to do this as quickly as we can. I know you're in a hurry, but, right? And I know that that's really hard, but I just wanted to acknowledge that.
All right, so the dirty word that Austin said earlier, artificial intelligence. Just kind of wanted to talk about it. So for, Carrie, you also mentioned, for publishers that own and operate all of their own inventory, it's a little bit more easy peasy. But then, artificial intelligence just in general, it's affecting a lot of the vendors and how they are optimizing their inventory. But then the search world, we're at the early stages of how it's affecting search in general. So I was just curious if you had a PO.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that I've always really loved about, well, it is like the thing I have always really loved about search is how much we can control it. I am a huge control freak, and I love pulling the levers and having control over what we're bidding on and what we're not bidding on, and the negative lists and the bids, and just, it's my world. I love it. I love media. I love data. I love all of this stuff, but this was kind of my world. And I've had a lot of these conversations lately about how a lot of those things are being like stripped away. So for any of you who are familiar with what's happening in paid search lately, there's a lot of AI being applied to it. Google search results in general, right? Gen AI results are being fed to us. So this isn't going away. And so a lot of, I've been doing this since 2007, old. And what's happening is I'm having to have these conversations where I'm telling people, like, we have to adapt. Like, you can't resist this. I have clients, I have colleagues that are trying to just kind of stay in a world where we are only bidding on an exact match. We are keeping really small campaigns where we're just picking our keywords. That has given us a lot of power to control the message and control the spaces that we're flexing in and out of, and I've always loved that. But we can't just do that anymore. So my team here, the group here, we've been experimenting with this for at least a year now in terms of Performance Max, which is where Google and now Microsoft have been applying AI within paid search. I could talk about this for a really long time, but what I would really encourage everybody to do is like work with your media teams, explore like what is that new balance of manual versus automated, of AI versus like human expert eyeballs on things. Because I know we hit on this earlier, right? Like, we can't just let AI take over what we're doing. We have to maintain a certain amount of control, and we are in charge of the brand safety. But also we have to learn how to use these tools in order to make us more efficient. And it is happening. Like, because we're testing these things, we are finding ways to improve our KPIs, but we have to do it in a brand safe way. So that's out here.
Did anyone else?
I want to touch on Austin's comment about deep fake creative, because in the podcast space, it's kind of interesting because sometimes the lead time to get a spot recorded is so long that we have to push out flight dates because of recording schedules. Hosts have their own lives. They like to travel. They take vacation. They're doing other shit. Stuff. So I'm curious because we have been, and it hasn't come out, more widely, but we've been playing around with AI voiceover talent. Some of which could be like Conan doing a read. The show still has to approve it. Conan still has to approve working with a brand. So that, that checks off it's still kind of endorsed, right, by the show, the host. But I'm curious to hear more of Austin's perspective on that.
How much time we got? Forever and ever and ever. I mean, well, I'm going to start with this comment. Inherently, I think what you see throughout human history, without being crude, like we're lazy in terms of we want to figure out the easiest way to do something. And what my fear is, specifically when we're talking about things like the Conan pre-reads that are becoming more AI generated, yes, right now there's a box to check to make sure that they're signing off and it's a brand safe message that's being delivered. there is going to be a point in time in which someone is just going to say, yep, we're good. We're going to create a bot that's actually going to tell us whether this is a brand safe creative. We're not actually going to have a person do it. Conan's going to have a team of people that are just creating an AI that says, is it meeting these criteria is good. So it all goes back to the human element and making sure that we're not giving up full control. Carrie, I couldn't agree with you more on all the stuff that's happening with Google. Every platform has been doing this. This isn't a new thing. I've been in the programmatic space for a very long time. AI has been around as long as I've been in it, in some way, shape, or form, machine learning at least. So this is just going to keep expanding and moving faster. We just have got to continue to make sure that we actually have a strategic vision against it. Again, work closely with your partners. I'm perfectly fine with any of our hosts doing AI-generated reads. That's great. I want to make sure that I'm the one then listening to it before it goes live. I want to make sure that I'm having some control over what the final product and output is. And then, again, have those conversations. If something isn't right or something is slightly off based off of what the AI believed Conan should be saying, have that discussion and be willing to tell your clients, we put a pause on this. It's going to be an extra 3 weeks because we think it's best for your business.
I freaking love AI. I'm so excited about it and the opportunities of what this is. From a brand safety lens, for sure, there are a lot of issues that come up with this. But I think the space with AI that is important to me is knowledge, is being able to understand what the platform actually is, how it works, what it does. Because you can't ask somebody to be brand safe with this technology if you don't understand how it can actually work. For example, like we want to use AI with Block to do a lot of things, to control creative, to build things faster, to be able to iterate quickly. So I built an AI-generated YouTuber that completely AI, runs by herself, talks to you, answers chat with voice, and does all those things. And I had to realize and figure out, how do I make her not plagiarize? How do I make sure that it doesn't come across and she cites sources when it's like necessary to cite sources, and what can she be open with? That was a pain in the ass, but it was really, really fun. And now I have a lot more knowledge to be able to go into conversations around AI. So my suggestion would be learn it, take some time, build a bot, actually build something within ChatGPT that can answer some questions, and then see what happens. Because you'll be eye-opening when you let her go and just let AI go and do its thing. But when you learn the parameters and you learn the tool, you'll know how to talk to your partners about AI and how it works, especially with the search space. Like legal is a huge issue for Block. We can only say certain things about certain products, but when we let AI go nuts on search, which is great, because it iterates fast, it gives you quick things, it can like optimize really well, until it says something bad. And then you're in trouble. So understanding the use of that and working with your partners to understand like how we're using it, especially PMAX, love PMAX, is really important.
Sorry, I'm back. Yeah.
Shout out to PMAX.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. So, I mean, PMAX, and yeah, I didn't want to drone on about this, but like these tools are incredible if you know how to use them, right? Like, so PMAX will spend all your money. All of it. It will.
I will too.
Actually, well, yeah, I'll take some. Chelsea will take some. We'll go shopping. Yeah, no, but like for real, we used to. I don't know if everyone here is familiar with like kind of the old days of Google paid search, where we would like scale up by opting into the Google Display Network, or the Google, or Frank knows. So. Or the search network, little more recent, right? Some of us may still be in the search network and finding that it's not doing a lot for us right now. We've had a few complaints of that not doing great. I can kind of confirm some like off the record conversations I've had with Google reps where they're like, yeah, we're not really servicing that anymore. So if you're still in the search network, you might get out. So what they're doing now is they're putting all of that effort into Performance Max, into demand gen, and that is now how you scale up. You don't scale up using these other tools anymore, but you have to like play with the balance of, because you run it alongside search. You don't do it instead of search. These things talk to each other, they feed each other data, and right now we're kind of defaulting at like a 70-30 start and then kind of playing with it from there. But this is the kind of stuff that you want to be testing out yesterday.
I love it. The human element, especially, and when it comes to AI, the common theme of conversation, whether it's in this industry or just in general life, is that it's taking tasks off our plate, it's making life easier, it's doing all of these things. But in our industry specifically, to me, it feels more like a time when we need to be doubling down on the time we spend learning these tools, and the time that we spent. Before AI and before there were all these other things, there would be these small projects that you would learn for self-betterment. And Andy, your point about just sort of building that YouTube AI person or thing, I guess, just makes a lot of sense, because once you practice it, once you understand. Chelsea, you also mentioned like one of the best ways to understand new podcast content, listen to an episode. That it's as simple as that, because we talk about brand safety versus brand suitability. The human element, Austin, you just said something that had me thinking about all these planes I've been watching this whole time. The human element's important because we don't technically need pilots, right? We're flying on autopilot. If we've been flying on autopilot for 30 years, something tells me autopilot can probably land the plane. But we need that human element there to look over the AI, look over the technology, and make sure everything is firing as it should be.
Can I add something to that real quick? I think that's a great analogy for our client side as well. Like, yes, a plane could fly itself. It could do all of the things, but how comfortable would you be in that plane if you knew a human wasn't sitting behind that cockpit actively handling it? And our clients, I think, feel the same way in a lot of instances. Sure, they're good with us putting brand safety measures in front of it, but they trust the human. They trust the person that's doing the work. And I think we can't forget that.
Except for that guy flying with his door open right now. His door is literally open as he's driving down.
Tuck and roll, tuck and roll.
Wow. Yeah, and then Valerie, you said something that just had me thinking, just encouraging your clients to not shy away from AI, but to sort of lean in and grow and learn more. For another analogy, I'd say it's like buying Bitcoin at $10. You don't want to wait until you miss the mark and it's 10 grand, and then you still think you missed the mark and it's 100 grand, and then you just constantly waiting. Diving in head first right now and being on the ground floor of something and understanding it in its infancy is only going to be so much more advantageous when we're 2, 3, 4 years down the line, and this thing has me up here in a hologram having this conversation from my living room. So yeah. Does anyone have?
Well, and a lot of companies and agencies are investing in these tools right now. So just to kind of like further push this message, like if your company is investing in AI tools, take advantage of that and be playing with them like while you have access to those tools. I know we're lucky enough that WPP has been investing in OpenAI, and we have trainings and modules that we get to play with. If your company is doing that, lean in hard, for sure.
So I know we're kind of coming up against it, but I did kind of want to end this thing with a little round robin, just about if anyone has any bold predictions for the future, or just kind of advice on how to navigate it, just kind of like one rule of thumb. But I think communication is probably going to be a common theme here. But did anyone have any closing thoughts they wanted to share about that?
I guess I don't know how bold it is. I do think us as an industry, particularly media, have been pushing against efficiency metrics for years and years, and that is our job, to be stewards of our client dollars, bring them results at the most efficient rate possible. But I also think there's a trend that people have been seeing, that what cost does that efficiency impact your brand safety, the quality of the inventory that you're buying on. And I do think in the next couple of years, you're hopefully going to see a more holistic view of what does success look like, and it's not solely kind of efficiency metrics, but it's a more higher level view of the quality of the inventory that you're buying, the quality of the engagement that you're getting with a consumer, and it's not purely that, what's the cheapest cost per booking or CPA that you can get, because ultimately it can put you in some pretty vulnerable positions.
I think I'm just going to be really broad with this and just say that, like, I know my world is changing a lot right now. I think most everybody I'm looking at probably has some version of that going on. So I think that what I'll leave everybody with is just like maybe like bring a little empathy to work every day and take a step back and like look at what your job has been and what it could be and what do you want it to be, and just start learning stuff. Have fun with it.
That is nice. Empathy is a good thing, right? A little grace. I would say know your break points, identify where it could break, and identify what you're going to do when it does. And just have that in your back pocket so you can go forward confidently with knowledge that there's brand safety issues, but you have the tools to identify where, when, and how to address them. 2? Double fist it.
I believe my future has a lot more conversations going to be happening with you all. I am going to be bullish on audio because it is pretty inherently brand safe, and so we are seeing dollars trickle in from social, from CTV, because there's still unknowns in CTV compared to like podcasts, where through a programmatic deal we pass back down to the episode level, right? We pass back a lot more data than CTV. So I will be bullish on that, but that's also my job. And I think just enhancements in the technology we'll see a lot more of, hopefully sooner rather than later, because I know it's such an important part of our day-to-day.
I think as an industry, we're getting ready to feel a paradigm shift back away from true go get performance at the most efficient way possible, and we're going to hear a lot more about quality and impact. Quality and impact, I think, are going to be two major words. If they're not already being discussed, they're going to become major talking points in the next 1 to 3 years. Every conversation we've been having recently with CEOs and CMOs isn't as much about what's the efficiency you can do for me. It's not even about brand safety. Brand safety is even starting to become more like viewability was 5-7 years ago. It's more about what's the quality and impact of what you're putting out into market for my brand.
I love it. No, those are really good final thoughts. And I guess for my final thought, I hope I kept myself out of the conversation enough. I know for those of you who do know me, it was hard for me to sit here on my hands during some of this and not communicate. But no, I think this is a really interesting conversation, and I agree. I think that we're at the beginning or middle or early middle of a paradigm shift in how we do things, how we measure quality, how we measure brand safety, and how we measure effectiveness. We've been talking about moving away from any sort of vanity metric, doesn't matter what the channel, for years now. And I think that AI will help us get there, but also we're all just becoming more and more educated on what brand safety means, navigating this polarized world, and I'm excited to take the next step on the journey with all you guys. But really appreciate everyone coming, and we did want to open it up to questions if there were any questions in the crowd. But I know it's in the morning, so I don't want to force anyone. Yeah.
Wait, cookies didn't deprecate? That didn't happen?
I thought that was going to happen.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like they just made it official. Yeah, I might be able to speak for everybody up here when I say, I don't think anybody is surprised about that one. I would say that I would encourage everyone to kind of continue to leverage your first-party data, but it's no longer like a fire drill, right? But as far as like Google leveraging AI, they are experimenting. We have been seeing them experiment with this within the search results. As far as what it looks like for us, I think this is why I'm kind of leaning hard on everybody learning how to use PMAX and how to use the tools that they're rolling out right now. I think these things are all going to kind of commingle, and we're going to figure out what that looks like kind of moving forward. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to shake out, but these things are going to kind of eventually be mashed together as far as I can tell.
So you're saying when you go into like Perplexity or ChatGPT or one of the other AI.
You're talking about the LLMs, right? You're talking about listings in the LLMs, not just within the search engine results?
Yes.
Okay.
So like when you go into a Perplexity, ask it a question, it pumps out, it also gives you website references. So I'm seeing a whole lot of SEO becoming a lot more important in your paid search strategy than just picking keywords or using Performance Max, because there's other platforms that people are now going for their search results.
So this is probably another hour, I think. There are definitely search has become a lot more platforms, to your point, than just like your Googles and your Microsofts. LLMs is its own evolving space. There's also social, which is its own space as well. People are using all of the different social platforms as search now.
Yep. You can use Meta's chatbots
Exactly.
To find answers. But even if you go to Bing now, it answers you more in an LLM sort of coding than it would in a normal SERP page.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, as far as answering the question of like how are they going to monetize that within the LLMs, I'm not sure. But do I expect it? Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where the integrated approach really comes into play as well with it. And it's so powerful to make sure that your teams are talking to each other and connecting and collaborating and being able to leverage the best of all aspects. Correct. Yep.
I'll be with Google next week, so I'll ask how they're going to monetize that, because they're going to charge us for it, for sure. 100% going to charge us for that. But you're right. The SEO right now is huge. I think they're going to find a way to like monetize SEO. Like, okay, what do we pick up? How do we pick it up? And now that's your charge. That's my crystal ball.
Any other questions? I'll pass the mic around for that.
Is there anything specific that, whether it be like your teams or your vendors, that you're looking for them to be looking out for in terms of brand safety and AI come these next 1 to 2 to 3 years?
I think the reading of robot.txt files on sites and how eventually I believe some of these will be able to pair what your site is and the information that's relevant to you and your kind of text pages relates to the content that people are developing. I think there's going to be something there. I don't know what. Nobody's really built a platform that I think is beneficial at this moment. But I do believe at some point vendors are going to start to not only look at what they can offer, but look at your own pages and how they can use the text files on both to create something.
I expect my partners to be smarter than me and be bringing ideas to us, as long as collaborating with me to make sure it's all correct. But yeah, they got to be smarter than us. That's what I expect of my agencies. It's like, come to me. If I have thought about it already, I'm assuming you have. If you haven't, well, that's fine. I'll do it myself.
Yeah, I actually think that's probably what I would say too, is proactivity is really helpful. I think an awareness of it too. I think there's nothing scarier than when you bring up an issue to a vendor and they aren't aware of it or they don't have a solution for it. I think for those of you who read the Adlytics article a couple weeks ago, the number of vendors I reached out to about it that did not have a solution in place or even awareness of it was terrifying. So I think people that are prepared and aware of what's happening in the industry is probably what I seek the most, because I don't need them to bring me IAS for free or double verify for free. I need them to have a strategy in place of their own inventory sources that is providing me probably a comfort level with my inventory.
I know I just said I'll stay out of it, but I changed my mind. Just in the way that Andy kind of mentioned, he expects his partners and his agency partners to be smarter than him. I think this goes back to Chelsea's proactivity, and I think it's on the vendors as well. I was singing boo-hoo, poor me earlier about, hey, how do we communicate better between vendors and agencies? But I think it's also very much on the vendors to be proactive with that information and act as if they're smarter than the agency. We know that's not the case, but we need to be proactive with that information to really just kind of prove that we are aware of all of these things that are just totally engulfing your entire day and the things that matter to you most. So vendors need to be a little less transactional and more deeper partners when it comes to this sort of stuff.
So I don't mean to make this an AI seminar, but it is at least brand safety adjacent. The conversations around Performance Max, I know there was discussions of Meta, specifically like Advantage Plus. I'm curious your perspective on if that level of automation is almost boomeranging, because with Performance Max, for instance, the answer to all client questions used to be, I don't know, it's kind of a big black box. But now we finally get to see search insights. We can see the actual search terms. We've been begging for that from Google forever. Advantage Plus on Meta is starting to pull back some of its automation and give you controls over the audience levers again. So this sort of brand safety conversation, is that the direction that AI is going? They want more human intervention, or is it more that it's taking a step back to get people comfortable so then we can start moving forward in that fully automated world? I just feel like a lot of agencies and my clients had a lot of hesitancy to the full automation. So I'm curious your perspective.
I personally think it's the latter. Obviously, this is speculative, but I know that there were a lot of us that we were kind of like, if you're not going to give us this data, we'll find a way to get it. So like we were applying scripts, we were doing what we could in order to, at least speculate somehow on like where this traffic was coming from, right? So I think it was more of, I think it was more pressure from us that kind of drove that. I don't think that they're doing any kind of an about face. I think it's more of a pacing issue. Like to your point, I don't think that anything is changing. I just think that it's like a realization that we have to take a certain pace. And while I think a lot of us were relieved to see that we got some data back, I think, at least for me, it doesn't really change what I'm preparing for and what I'm planning for and what the team is planning for, essentially.
Other questions?
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. And we expect fully that every one of you will be at every event we have for the rest of the year. Thank you.